I am a 37 years old male. I have a 13Y.0 son. I was a widower when I met my now wife. She has a 16Y.0 daughter from another relationship. The family is often on pretty good terms. My son is the quiet one in the house. He keeps to himself a lot, but not to the point of being concerning. My wife and stepdaughter are the complete opposite. They both encourage him to be outgoing and share activities and join gatherings with extended family. My son complained about having to be forced out of his comfort zone and having his need for space invalidated. I spoke to both my wife and stepdaughter and asked them to give him space and freedom to spend his time however he wanted. They apologized and promised to let him be. As Mother's Day was approaching, I wanted to throw my wife a surprise Mother's Day celebration. It was no longer a surprise because my stepdaughter gave her the heads so she could prepare. Yesterday I got off work earlier than usual to get final arrangements done. We planned to celebrate at the restaurant and invited her family there. I had the key, and while I was entering the house through the front door, I overheard my wife and stepdaughter talking to my son. My wife was asking my son if he could convince me to let him stay home and not go with them to the restaurant to celebrate. I paused and decided to keep listening. My son said why, and she told him that his introverted and socially inept attitude will make her family uncomfortable and will ruin the mood. He promised her that he'd be well behaved and would try to interact and socialize with everyone, but she said that she wasn't buying it. He kept reassuring her, but she snapped and told him that technically she's not his mom, so she didn't get why he wanted to celebrate Mother's Day with her so badly. My stepdaughter threw some, I don't remember, backhanded comment, and then both of them were shocked to see me standing there. Both were staring without saying anything. I told my son and his stepsister to go to their rooms, then told my wife that the celebration was off, cancelled. She tried to argue, asking why repeatedly, and I told her why. She tried to explain that she didn't mean it like that and that I only heard part of the conversation but not all of it. I told her I was done arguing and the decision was already made. She yelled, asking what she was going to tell her family, and said that I was making tremendous mistake towards her. I ignored her while she kept throwing tantrum after a tantrum. Early this morning she took my stepdaughter and went to stay with her folks. Not a single call or text from her so far. Situation is full of tension. I'm upset still, but more hurt, to be honest. I mean, yes, I did say I was going to have this celebration, but I thought that what she said to my son was too harsh to ignore. I am a 35 years old female. I don't have the best relationship with my husband's mom. Since day one she tried to make remarks and compare me to her. She then tried to get on my good side and started overly praising everything I do, and sometimes even copying me, like that one time when she dyed her hair purple just like mine, and when everyone pointed out how ridiculous she looked. She actually blamed me and accused me of trying to make a joke out of her. So, anyways, my husband and I took 2 weeks off work to go visit some places out of the country, tourism in other words. Thing is, I was the one who saved up for and arranged for the trip. My husband was responsible for booking the tickets. My husband's mom wanted to come along and threw temper tantrums when I said no. She called, texted, sent people to talk to me into letting her come. Even threatened to call the police and make some complaint up to get us to stay if she can't come. My husband said we should just take her, but I told him he was wrong to tell her about the trip in the first place. He gave me an ultimatum. Said he wouldn't go if she can't come, and I told him I'd gladly call his bluff, which made him take his words back and say, fine. I will tell her to stop it because we won't take her. Things got quieter, suspiciously quieter. The day of the trip came and we got to the airport at 2 p.m. My husband was walking ahead of me and was looking left and right like he was looking for someone. I asked him, but he didn't respond. He led me to the waiting area, and first thing I saw was his mom standing there with her luggage. I froze in my spot. I felt a cold wave washing over me and I was fuming inside. She and my husband were hugging. That's when I quietly turned around and started walking towards the exit. My husband followed me while shouting at me to stop. He tried to stop me, but I told him off the harshest way possible. He tried to say I was overreacting and that his mom was there anyway and I should let it go and not mess the trip up for us. I told him he and his mom could still go and that I was going home. I went home and sobbed into my dog's fur for several minutes. Turned out he booked her a ticket without me knowing. An hour later he came home yelling and raging about how pathetic and spiteful I was to walk out and go home and ruin the trip last minute. I told him he caused this to happen. He said that I was being so hard on his mom, it's ridiculous. I refused to fight anymore, but he kept on berating me, then called my family to tell them that the trip was cancelled, and that it was because of me. My family said that I shouldn't have ruined it for myself and should have sucked it up and done my best to enjoy. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text, and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. My wife and I, both mid-30s, have been happily married for 9 years. We don't have any kids and don't want kids. We had the what if talk before getting married. She told me she would want to have an abortion if she ever got pregnant. Yesterday my wife told me she's 9 weeks pregnant. She's on the pill, but accidents happen. She said she wants to carry to term and give the baby up for adoption. Naturally, I was surprised by the news and her change of mind. I asked her if she considered getting an abortion. She said she had, but she doesn't want to because she feels a bond to the fetus. She told me she has been researching adoption and learned that the local adoption agencies only accept birth mothers who are okay with having an open adoption. I told her I wasn't really comfortable with this and asked her if she would have an abortion. She started crying and spent the night at her sister's place. She won't answer my phone calls. I'm uncomfortable with this for a few reasons. I was adopted at birth and my adoptive parents weren't the best. I know this isn't the case for everyone who was adopted, but I can't help but have a negative view about it. A few years ago I tried to find my biological parents to learn my medical history, but I couldn't. I was sore about it for a little while, but it doesn't bother me anymore. My wife is aware of these points. I just don't want to pass on my genes because they're essentially a mystery to me. I also don't like kids. My wife said she actually would prefer to keep the baby, but she knows I wouldn't want to. So she said having an open adoption sounded like a reasonable compromise. I understand why she thinks that, but I still don't want to have any biological children, regardless of how much / little I would be involved in raising him or her. My wife takes birth control for reasons other than contraception. If she ever wanted to stop taking it, I would support her 100%. I realize that I'm an idiot for not getting a vasectomy a long time ago though. It honestly never occurred to me until now. I think because my wife has always been on birth control and said she would have an abortion. I see now that it was irresponsible of me to not get one regardless. I'm going to get snipped. She and I talked, it was emotional for both of us, but no voices were raised. I apologized for putting her in this position by being an idiot and not getting a vasectomy earlier. I also apologized if she felt like I was pressuring her when I asked her to have an abortion. I didn't mean to pressure her, but I know words aren't always received as we intended. She said she felt pressured a little, but forgave me because she knows I was totally caught off guard. She apologized for having a change of heart regarding abortion. She said she was really surprised by her own feelings and hopes I don't feel like she tricked me. I don't. We mutually agreed that it would be good to spend one more night apart to really think. We've always have a strong marriage, and we're both committed to working through this, whatever that may look like.